This video is a review of determining the distance between 2 points without graphing the 2 points. So practicing determining the distance just looking at the 2 sets of ordered pairs. Alright, so the first thing that we want to think about is to determine if your line is horizontal or vertical. Okay? This helps you determine whether or not the x values are the same or if the y values are the same. Because if the x values are the same, so if we had 4, 2, and 4, 3, if the x values are the same, then you know that this is a vertical line, and you're going to determine the distance, you only need to concern yourself with the y values. Same thing for if the y values were the same. Let's say we had 2, 4, and 3, 4. My y values are the same, so that's a horizontal line. So to determine the distance between the 2 points, I'm going to be looking at my x values. Alright, the second thing that we want to think about is to determine if the line crosses the 0 value x or y axis. So what that means is thinking about our 0 points that split the graph into quadrants, right? Here's quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. Okay? So these lines here that separate into the quadrants, those are our 0x and 0y axes. So if it crosses the 0 axis, this means that you're going to use the absolute value and you're going to add. Okay? If it does not cross the x-axis, that means that you need to determine the difference between the 2 values, and that's subtraction. Okay? So that means if a line, whether horizontal or vertical, goes across, right, is in 2 different quadrants, that means we use the absolute value and we add. If it's contained within a quadrant, that's when we subtract. Okay? So let's look at our first example. Our first example is -2, 3 and -2, 5. Okay? So being that our x values are the same, -2 and -2 are the same, right? This tells us that we have a vertical line, okay? So here's a data point, here's a data point, okay? And this one is -2, 5, and this one is -2, 3, okay? So the 2's are the same, so to find the distance, we're looking at 5 and 3, okay? Now, looking at 5 and 3, we have 3, we have 5, okay? They're both positive, okay? That means they're in the same quadrant. That means they don't pass over the 0 axis, which means we need to find the difference, right? So they're both positive, which means the same quadrant, which means we find the difference. 5 minus 3 is 2. So the distance between these 2 points is 2. Alright, let's look at the next example. Alright, 3, 6, and 3, -6. Okay? So 3 and 3 are the same. So that means we have, again, another vertical line. And now we're looking at the distance between 6 and -6. This number is positive, this number is negative, okay? That means that our line crosses over the 0 axis, okay? So this would be, here's our 0 axis, here's our 3, +6, 3, -6. Crosses over this 0 axis, so that's quadrant 1 and quadrant 4, okay? So that means, since it crosses over, we use the absolute value of our 2 numbers to find the distance. So the absolute value of 6 is 6, plus the absolute value of -6 is 6. So the distance here is 12. The distance between these 2 points is 12. Alright, let's look at our next example. -4, 2, and 5, 2. Okay? So now we have a horizontal line. Because our y values are the same, we want to concern ourselves with the -4 and 5. So we have a -4 and we have a 5. Since one is negative and one is positive, that means They cross over that 0 axis, which means we're going to use the absolute value. So the absolute value of -4 plus the absolute value of 5. The absolute value of -4 is 4, plus the absolute value of 5 is 5, so 9. The distance between these 2 points is 9. Okay? So looking at that again, our y-axis was the same. We looked at just these two numbers. We saw that one was negative, one was positive. That tells us it crosses over the 0 axis. So we use our absolute value and add. So 4 plus 5 is 9. Okay? Let's look at another example. -25, 25, -25, -30. Okay? So now our x values are the same because -25 and -25 are the same, so we don't need to concern ourselves with those. We only want to concern ourselves with the values that are different. 25 and -30 are different. So now we have to determine if we add or if we subtract to find the distance. Well, we have a positive 25 and a -30. That tells us it crosses over the 0 axis. So we're going to use our absolute value. So that's going to be 25. The absolute value of 25 plus the absolute value of 30, which is 25 plus 30, which is 55. So the distance here is 55. Okay. Let's look at another example. We have -3, 4 and -3, 7. Okay. So now our x values are the same. They're both -3, so we don't need to concern ourselves with that. We want to look at the values in the two ordered pairs that are different. We have 4 and 7. Okay? Notice that the 4 is positive, the 7 is positive. Okay? That means that they are in the same quadrant. We don't cross over the 0 axis. So we're going to want to subtract to find the distance between the two. So to find the difference, we say, well, what is 7 minus 4? And it is 3. So the distance between -3, 4 and -3, 7 is 3. Okay? 9, -2, 9, 22. Okay? So again, our x values are the same. They're both 9, so we don't want to concern ourselves with that. We want to look at this -2 versus this 22. The -2 is negative, the 22 is positive, which means this line will cross over a 0 axis, which means we use the absolute value. So we say, well, what is the absolute value of 2 plus the absolute value of 22? 2 plus 22 is 24. So the distance between these 2 points is 24. All right, and that was the last one. So again, just to review, we want to look at the numbers, the values that are different, and looking at the values that are different, determine whether or not you need to subtract or add. So again, if it's in different quadrants, we add, and if it's in the same quadrant, we subtract. So different quadrants, because we had a positive and a negative, we add. Same quadrant, because we had both positives, we subtract. Or, here was positives again, so here we subtracted because they were both positive. And they could also be both negative. So if we had 3, -4, and 3, -8, okay, our -4 and our -8 are what we're looking at. Since they're both negative, that means they're in the same quadrant, so we're going to find the difference. 8 minus 4 is 4, so the distance between those 2 points would be 4.